Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum.
He's like a bad guy in a movie.
Reset that, Professor Schwab. Finally, Tony from the land of baloney is stepping down. And these guys take formal resistance to Pope Francis all the way into the pages of the New York Times. Meanwhile, the G20 crowd wants us to get one of their groovy new digital passports. No thanks, guys. Plus, how do you like your Tesla so far? California is running out of power. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt, and this is the Remnant Underground. After tonight's program, there are a few things in this show that may get us in trouble with our wardens, our friends at Big Tech. So make sure you sign up for my newsletter or follow me on Twitter, because this is going to be an edited version if you're watching us on YouTube. So sign up for the newsletter right down here. Follow me on Twitter, so that no matter what happens, our jailers and hall monitors can't prevent me from letting you know when we post Remnant TV videos. Thank you very much. Now, big news. Tony from the land of baloney is finally, thank God, finally stepping down. And we would just like to thank him for all his work, and I hope the door doesn't smack you in the backside on your way out, Tony. But before Tony left, he wanted to get one last message out to us. Because why? Because he cares.
First of all, everybody should be vaccinated and boosted with flu and with COVID. Whether or not you wear a mask, or another thing we shouldn't underestimate is testing.
You remember that little Energizer bunny thing? Keeps on going, you know, with the there's Tony. What is this now? The third Thanksgiving that he's trying to scare the heck out of us? No one cares, no one's paying any attention, which to me says
he wasn't right in the head.
You know, and maybe that's just the problem here. Maybe none of them is right in the head.
I call myself a joyful warrior. Right?
And these people are all in it together, and they're still working to orchestrate their great little reset. They're serious. You know, people say, well, it's never going to work, man. Don't you realize? Don't pay any attention to these guys. It's never going to work. They're insane. They won't be able to pull this off without, for example, destroying the economies of the world. Without, for example, wrecking our country, the United States. To which I say, and? Don't you get it? That's the point.
Right?
What you got to keep in mind, looking at anything that they're doing, remember, whether it's Francis, Schwab, what is their little catchphrase? Equity. Equity and inclusion, right? They want equity. So think about this. If you break the American economy, America becomes what? A third world country. Just another country struggling to survive. We're already seeing that, aren't we? But you know what that is? That's equity, baby. That's what they want. If you break our energy independence, which we've all lived through it, that's exactly what Team Biden is doing at the behest of Team Davos, right? Breaking our energy independence, we become like any other country, looking to the global superstate for survival, for energy, for food, for everything. And that's equity, once again. Electric vehicles are designed to fail for us, you see? They're designed to be a failure for us, but they're going to give all the power, literally, the power of energy, to the government.
California will require all new cars sold to be zero-emission vehicles.
If that were somehow to happen.
That means a lot more electric vehicles drawing power from the grid.
But the grid is already limited. So limited that last summer, California's governor told people, don't use your electric car.
Asking residents to avoid charging their EVs in order to conserve energy.
Roughly speaking, you have to double your electric grid to move the energy out of gasoline into the electric sector. No one is planning to double the electric grid in California, so there'll be rationing.
Rationing. When there isn't enough electricity, cities will simply turn some of the power off.
You get it? We've all seen the old cowboy movies where the big, bad, evil guy controls the river upstream, puts a dam on it, and so he can cut off all the water from all the ranchers and everybody else, the smaller people down there in the valley, right? It's an age-old thing. Well, that's what they're doing with this. Whoever controls the energy grid controls us. right down to our freedom of movement. You see, the Great Reset, friends, they're still doing this, as I say. And their ultimate goal is that sort of thing. You just saw the lights going out on the grid, right? They want total control of that. And not control from Washington, D.C., from the swamp. They want control of that from the New World Order, the global government that they hope to build. Insane? Yeah, it's insane. But that's what they want. The ultimate goal of the Great Reset is to ration everything, including energy, freedom of movement, of course, travel. We've been talking about that down here for 2 years. By 2030, if you don't get the thing, you're not going to be traveling outside of this country.
So let's have a digital health certificate acknowledged by WHO. If you have been vaccinated or tested properly, then you can move around.
Now, you look at that and you say, well, you must have, cherry-picked that from a year ago or something. What was that guy there from Indonesia? What's his deal? No, that was from last week. See, they're all still talking about this. They're all still in the middle of the pandemic, don't you know? And if this one fades out a little too fast, well, they're over there right now talking about the next one.
Indonesia has achieved, G20 country has agreed to have this digital certificate using WHO standard, and we will submit into the next World Health Assembly in Geneva as the revision to international health regulation. So hopefully for the next pandemic, we can still see some movement of the people, some movement of the goods, and movement of the economy.
Well, you just saw that took place at the G20 summit meeting in Bali just last week. Of course, everybody was there. All the cool kids were there, including this clown.
If we look at all the challenges, we can speak about a multi-crisis. An economic, a political, a social, an ecological, an institutional crisis. But actually, what we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world.
Oh, shut up.
There's Klaus talking to the business leaders of the world at a conference set up for the political leaders of the world, the G20 and the B20, right? And he's talking about the pandemics and the stuff that's going to give them power to reimagine the world, right? All they need is a few more pandemics, and they're going to have control of everything, and they're going to officially own you. But here's the good news. It's bat poop nuts. It's absolutely insane. And all that has to happen in order for this thing to begin falling apart, which is already happening, is you need enough people to wake up. You don't need to be pious. You don't need to be a Christian. You don't need to be a traditional Catholic. You don't need to be anybody special to not want what they got in mind. And this explains why guys like Joe Rogan and Bill Maher and all these guys are like, what the heck is going on? Who are these unelected fools?
And dude who dresses like Darth Vader.
Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum.
He's like a bad guy in a movie.
That spirit, that's going to take off throughout the whole country. It already is. And that, friends, is how this could potentially be stopped, if in fact it's not the end of the world. As I said last week, once we realize that this is a battle between good and evil, and once we get back on our knees and, start recognizing the fact that we have to recall God to this country, well, the practical application of how we fight is to wake people up to what these lunatics are doing. Because most people think, well, it's just a conspiracy theory. There's no truth to that. If they've heard of it at all, Davos. It's just a conspiracy theory. But the thing is, and this I say to encourage you, don't get discouraged. This show's not about discouraging anybody. So many people who fell hard for the whole COVID thing at first, well, right now, 2 years later, they are freaking out over what's happening. So I brought this doctor up before because I remember following him. He always struck me as a truth seeker who nevertheless fell hard for COVID and was all down with the vaxxers for a while because he just couldn't believe. That's why I keep saying traditional Catholics, we're practiced at this. We know not to trust these people, government of the state, government of the church. Been in these trenches a long time. When somebody like this doctor, he's like, they couldn't be doing that. And he thought, they couldn't be doing that. That's impossible. He thought that way for a long time, a year and a half. And now he's waking up. And this is what that wake up looks like.
Now, the G20 leaders have been making plans in Bali for the next pandemic. So G20 basically are the main countries, in the economic countries in the world that we know of. Now, section 22 of their declaration, we recognise that the extensive COVID immunisation is a global public good. We acknowledge the importance of shared technical standards and verification methods to facilitate seamless international travel, including proof of vaccinations. They want this universal electronic method. Now, I'm no expert in electronics, of course, but it would seem to me that if you can put one criteria on your electronic device, it's quite easy to put another criteria on your electronic device. So if there's particular groups of people and you wanted to monitor their travelling or restrict their travelling, I suppose you could probably do that with a click of a button. G20 countries should adopt a digital health certificate using WHO standards. I'm not quite sure who voted for the WHO. I can't remember voting for them, but there you go. Let's have a digital health certificate acknowledged by the WHO. I'm sorry about traumatising in this way. I can actually feel the... Let's carry on. If you've been vaccinated or tested properly, who decides what properly is? Who decides what the vaccines is? The WHO just seem to decide all this. Anyway, sounds like pretty good news. World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization have got our health in hand for the next pandemic, and our role is to say thank you very much.
Welcome to the party. Been going on a long time. And now you know, just as we've known, that what this is all about is control by maniacal, psychotic, very wealthy people. They want to control movement. They want to control life. They want to control thought. Even control birth, right? Which, according to a new documentary now, don't know if we can say the name of it for our YouTube friends, but I'll say it. Maybe we'll tick it out. Look for it in the unedited version at remnant-tv.com, because we're going to get into some of this documentary. It's called, according to that documentary, they've taken control of birth to a whole new level.
This section has been cut to appease big tech. For the full version, go to remnant-tv.com.
Now people say, come on, man, get serious, get real. I'm not talking about any of this on CNN. That's tinfoil hat stuff. You think? These people have been advocating for worldwide extermination of babies in the wombs of their mothers for decades. Once you do that, do you think it's such a stretch to do other things? And as you know, it's all about reducing the world's population to save the climate, right? That's what they're telling you. That's what they want you to believe. That's what the gullible fools think is really going on here.
Moving on, issuing a stark warning, the head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City State has said that the earth will become uninhabitable if there is no concrete action taken on climate change.
I've said so many times, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Pope Francis, they're not worried about the climate. Do you think people that are as selfish as they are, with their billions of dollars and their estates and boats and ships and everything else all over the world, are really worried that the planet won't sustain life for people 50 years after I'm gone? Do you honestly think they're capable of that level of compassion? They don't believe in climate change, other than the thing that they use to control everybody. I have too many cars, and I'm polluting the air, and the air that's going to cause global change, climate change, and people are going to die. Well, how dare you drive your car? How dare you eat your steaks? How dare you have your hamburgers? How dare you have 7 children, as I do? You see? You're killing the planet. It's the ultimate means of control, and it's dogmatic. It's a faith system. It's a creed. It's a cult, right? It's a beautiful day outside right now. It looks no different than it did in 1970 when I was a kid. Don't believe your own eyes. Nope. It's coming. The world's gonna burn up. You believe anything now. And you know that. That's the scariest part of all this. People will believe anything. And we have never had leaders with less conscience, with less of a moral code than we have right now. They will lie to you about everything.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
And they got all sorts of ideas. You want to lower that population to save the planet? Well, look what's going on in the schools. How about we start giving puberty blockers to the kiddies? How about sex changes for kindergartners? How about we just turn the sex switch on in little kids and get them all hopelessly sexually messed up and confused by the time they're 10? How about we mutilate their little reproductive organs? How about we do that, whether their parents like it or not? You see? You think those little kids that we're all talking about, the kids in the classrooms are getting abused like this, sexually assaulted like this by the adults in their lives every day? You think if they survive, they're somehow going to be capable of having children? And Bill Gates can sit back and smile at that prospect. Do you think that the psychotic Great Reset crowd actually care if they get caught in the act doing all this? It's going to be too late. It's too big. It's global. They don't care. They're not trying to seduce you. They're not trying to convince us. This is not politics. This is tyranny. This is tyrannical madness.
The future is not just happening. The future is built by us.
We are going to reinvent a new world. What is that? That's something out of the movies, right?
He's like a bad guy in a movie.
That's not politics. He's trying to convince us. Mandatory vaccines for the military, huh? Why not? There's something going.
This section has been cut to appease big tech. For the full version, go to remnant-tv.com.
Making vaxes mandatory, we achieved equity. Somebody else is going to have to come in and take care of the defense of these borders, some sort of global entity, you see? And if we don't have a strong military, well, we're probably going to need some sort of an international police force, too. Remember when we had Officer Hipple down here, and I asked him about that, the New York police officer. Eventually, they're going to get rid of all the homegrown cops.
Secret Chinese police station is open in New York City. Joining us to discuss this and some of the threats is the author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. How concerned should we be here with this police station open within our borders?
We should be extremely concerned. This is a violation of our sovereignty.
I still think this is a conspiracy theory. Welcome, friends, to the Great Reset, because as the problem with that is not that the Chinese are trying to set up cop shops in Lower Manhattan, but it's that we have lost any appreciation for our national sovereignty, that we tolerate it, that we permit it. And that, friends, is what the Great Reset is all about. That's why the border is wide open, too. You know what you need to do?
Get vaccinated.
Being vaccinated is an act of love.
You've got to be vaccinated.
Get a vaccine.
Get that jab. From the President of the United States to goofy little Jesuits, they're all singing from the Field Marshal's songbook.
Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
Well, you see, what happened is the traditional Catholics told Klausy boy there to pound sand. Remember, we've gone over this so many times. In the middle of COVID, we went out in the parking lot and continued having mass in the back of trucks. And so Klaus gets upset, and he tells his boy Francis to rein us in, man, which is why God wants us to tell Francis to pound sand too when he comes out and tries to take away the Latin Mass, you see?
I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
See, this isn't politics, it's spiritual war, isn't it? They know it. Maybe we're starting to figure it out now, finally, after all these years. And so you see what I'm getting at, friends? No matter where you are, no matter what your state in life is, you have much more power than you think you do. You just need to say no, because it works. You know, we always compared Klausy boy there to one of the Bond villains. Well, let's look at that for a minute. You had the big, bad, evil Bond villains, didn't you? But and they did have the power, they had the money, they had the psychotic attitude to take over the whole world in those movies, right? It always only took one James Bond, one hero, to take down Goldfinger, whoever the heck it was, right? And that reflects that bit of fantasy, that fiction reflects the way it's always been in history. The masses fall for the seduction, for the politics, for the tyranny, and just a couple of people stand up, fight back, and change everything.
I die His Majesty's good servant, but God's first.
I hope you can forget everything I've said so far and remember this, because this is the thing that seems to divide us. It goes all the way back to 2016, when people didn't understand why we were supporting Donald Trump, right? Oh, he's divorced, he's this, he's that, he's not a saint, he's not a daily communicant. And we had to explain again and again and again. And now over the next 2 years, we're going to be engaged in the fight of our lives, right? Because everybody's out of the closet now. Everybody is. Good guys, bad, everybody's out. And see, the thing is, down here in the underground, we're not Republicans, and we sure as hell aren't Democrats. So what are we? We're Christian patriots. We are the clans. The clans are all over the world. The clans recognize each other when they see each other. When they see someone speaking truth, they recognize it and they come together and they change history. That's the way it's always been. We are the remnant, small r. What's left of the believers. And the faith that we still have is enough to take down kingdoms, evil, tyrannical regimes. The Christian patriots, you need to believe this. This is not pie in the sky. This is the only way out. And as Christian patriots, we're going to fight on our terms. And this is what I want to stress. We're going to scan the horizon, if you will, for anyone, any rogue knight, anyone, any group, any clan who can help wake people up. That's what our objective is. Wake the folks up. Because this thing that Klaus Schwab and these lunatics want to do is anything but popular. Wake the people up. It's an actual practical plan of action that can and will work. Wake them up to what's really going on. It's happening right now all over the world. You know that. And you don't have to be a traditional Catholic to realize that guys like Klaus Schwab are not right in the head.
I want to have the values not of Davos imposed on us, but of places like Destin and Dunedin, where I grew up. Things like the World Economic Forum, those policies are dead on arrival in the state of Florida. We are not going to go down that road.
Okay, now here's the part I want you to remember. You look at DeSantis. Maybe you're a Trump fan. Maybe you're going for somebody else. And what do you say? Don't fall for DeSantis, man. Don't fall for him. It's just lip service. He's not really one of us. Okay, now, read my lips on this, okay? When it comes to something like DeSantis, this is important. This is crucial. I don't care if it's just lip service. If that's just lip service, then you know what I say? Bring it on, baby, because we need more of that. The whole world needs lip service like that. Remember? We said this years ago when Donald Trump's out there on the mall standing with the pro-lifers, giving lip service to the defense of the unborn. The whole world saw that. All of Europe, rotten, secular Europe saw that. There's nobody in Europe who would speak those words in defense of the unborn or would say the name of Jesus Christ at Christmas time. You see, these things matter because they remind a world that's going to hell. They remind that world of what we've lost, right? So on the lips of the President of the United States to stand for the unborn, I don't care if it's lip service. I hope it's not. But even lip service in that case is massive. The whole point of what they're doing in American politics right now, by the way, is to make us into Europe. And any of you who have traveled to Europe, you realize when you turn the TV on, you watch politics over there, you can't figure out what the difference is between the good guys and the bad guys. They're all the same. At least they were before Trump changed a lot of things, even in Europe. You can't tell. They don't talk about abortion, gay marriage, family, God. They don't talk about it anymore. The whole point of what's happening in U.S. politics right now is to make us shut the heck up about God and morality and the unborn. You see? So what you call lip service is actually incredibly powerful in the world if you've traveled around a little bit and see how that lip service exists nowhere else on the planet practically. The world needs more of that. And if in America politicians still feel obliged to seduce us with that sort of lip service, well, we win. Because that means there's enough of us for politicians to see a winning horse in us, a winning horse in pro-life, a winning horse in pro-family, a winning horse in pro-God, people like us. There are a lot of us, and they know it. So what DeSantis just said is a game changer.
The World Economic Forum, those policies are dead on arrival in the state of Florida.
I have no idea if Ron DeSantis is going to turn out to be a great statesman. I hope so. But that's not the point. I'm not looking for a spiritual director. I'm not looking for a hero. I'm looking for somebody who will still speak out against the demons. And what he just said needs to be said. And every single time someone, anyone with influence says that kind of thing, says what needs to be said, more people in the world will join the fight. They're going to wake up. Because here's the little secret. The people don't actually want what the lunatics are selling. Think about that. Nobody wants this. Think about your neighbors, your friends, people at church, whatever. Do they want broken economy, the trashed economy? Do they want America to disappear? Do they want that backyard barbecue and that football game on Sunday afternoon to disappear? America ceases to exist. We got no extra food for a barbecue or a Thanksgiving dinner. Economy's shot to hell. Do they want that? No. Does anybody in your life actually want under the skin surveillance?
People could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, which I think is maybe the most important development of the 21st century.
You know? That's what they want in Davos. Does anybody in the real world want that? Does anybody actually want the end of private property? Like what that little ferret up in Canada is doing? Anybody want that? Does anybody want the end of privacy? Does anybody want the rationing of energy? Does anyone actually want to drive around in those crappy little electric cars? I can tell you, not up here in Minnesota as the temperature starts to plummet. Good luck with that thing. Hope you can charge it up okay. Hope you don't get crushed by a snowplow while you're out there trying to charge your little Tesla. Does anybody want open borders? Ask the folks in southern United States right now how much they're enjoying the open border plan of George Soros. This is sheer insanity. Which is why so many people are waking up. And which is why we need to be confident that we can be part of the solution by waking them up even more. Give me an example. 2 days ago, Alex Brusowitz tweeted this. And you see on your screen it says, "Never forget when Trump went into the World Economic Forum, aka the globalist lion's den, and called them out straight to their faces." Right? And there's a video of that talk, which we use. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Now, that's good, fine. But then along comes the former president's son, Donald Trump Jr., and he retweets that, what we just had on the screen. And Don Jr. says, quote, "Trump was on this before anyone, and he called them out to their faces, called Davos out to their faces, on their home turf. Jumping on this now and pretending it's novel thought is pretty laughable." Hear what he said there? That's a former president's kid actually competing with somebody else on Twitter over who was on to the lunatics of Davos first. Right? That's what that is. And it's true. Because we said the exact same thing when it happened 2 years ago. We were kind of by ourselves. That's a video that we did, millions and millions of views, because that struck me the same way. Listen to what he said. People were looking at Trump at Davos, and that's all they saw. The little background thing, you know, with the World Economic Forum behind. They said, "He's at Davos. He's one of them." I actually listened to his talk, and I was like, oh my gosh, he literally went onto their turf and said everything polar opposite of what they believe.
And he stuck a mega finger in their eye.
These alarmists always demand the same thing: absolute power to dominate, transform, and control every aspect of our lives. We will never let radical socialists destroy our economy, wreck our country.
And guess what happened to him? They got rid of him shortly thereafter. Maybe you remember some of this.
2 days after Donald Trump gave that speech, the 89-year-old leftist weirdo billionaire George Soros made an emergency intervention where, at Davos, once again, warning that the U.S. 2020 election will determine the, quote, fate of the whole world.
So we can't be distracted by all the baubles and whistles and pretty things on TV and our little gadgets and all of that. They're over there, the G20 folks, the Davos folks, they're over there plotting the downfall of everything we believe in, including our country, our hearth and home. We can't be distracted by the red waves and the blue waves and the personalities involved and all of that. That's just a distraction. That's what we started talking about last week. The real war, friends, is between us, between the children of light, as Usher Saviganov has said again and again and again, between the children of light and the children of darkness. The children of light are going to win if we continue to be the children of light. So it's us versus the globalists psychos, the lunatics who've declared war on the entire Christian moral and social order. You see? Us versus them. And there's the diabolical disorientation of folks like DeSantis or whoever they are. We can't expect them to be Charlemagne. We got to be content with what they bring to the war, bring to the battlefront. It's not going to be the whole story. It's not going to be perfect. But they're bringing part of it. They're bringing some weapons. They're bringing something that will help us advance. And anyone, friends, anyone who publicly stands against the Great Reset Satanists at this point is, in fact, advancing the cause of Christian patriotism.
Things like the World Economic Forum, those policies are dead on arrival in the state of Florida.
And it's the same in the church. Anyone who publicly stands against Team Francis is advancing the cause of Christian restoration throughout the whole world. It seems like every week now we come with a story of another bishop. We'll throw this one up on the screen here. It's this bishop from the Netherlands who's just pulled himself out of the synod on synodality. Is that because you spoke up, do you think? Is that because we spoke up? Did that have anything to do with it? Maybe. We don't know. All we know is another bishop. He pulled himself out of the synod. He said, this is not of the Holy Spirit. I'm done. Yet another bishop, friends. Because, again, nobody wants this. Nobody wants what Francis is selling. Francis the globalist. Now, the New York Times, I'll close on this, I promise. The New York Times is no friend of ours. But even the New York Times is beginning, or at least some people at the Times are beginning to see what's going on here. On November 15th, 2022, for example, the New York Times religion columnist, one of them, Ruth Graham, published this. I'll put it up on the screen. A very favorable article on the resurgence of the traditional Latin Mass. Showed beautiful little children at Mass. Nobody looked crazy. Nobody looked like a psycho from the woods. Everybody's presented in this very favorable light in the New York Times. The New York Times, I don't need to remind this audience, is the paper of record. Not only here, but in Europe, especially in the Vatican. And the very last thing on earth that Pope Francis needs or wants is favorable coverage of Latin Mass Catholics inside the New York Times. Did you ever think that this was coming? And that article, that New York Times article, has now gone viral. But wait, there's more. On October 1st, 2022, we held a press conference at the Catholic Identity Conference. But yes, before God and history, we resist his agenda on the grounds that it does harm to Mother Church of Jesus Christ, a fact we believe to be demonstrably obvious, as the following interventions will make clear. Now, before that press conference got started, Ruth Graham from the New York Times contacted us requesting press credentials to cover that press conference at the Catholic Identity Conference. Well, guess what? Our statement of public resistance to Pope Francis made its way into the pages of the New York Times. At the conference in Pittsburgh this fall, Catholic critics of Pope Francis laid out 3 articles of resistance against the Vatican and its current leadership. Their top objection was to Traditionis Custodes, which they called an act of religious discrimination against traditional Catholics. You got it exactly right. Thank you, Ms. Graham, and happy Thanksgiving, Francis. It's spreading throughout the world, resistance against Francis's evil agenda. That's the takeaway. So resist them. Resist them until it hurts. Stand with God no matter what. And then sit back, friends, say your prayers, sit back and watch this stupid, idiotic, lunatical New World Order collapse before the eyes of the little people like us. The little people who never lost faith in God and who refused to comply with hell. Francis, Mr. Schwab, please read my lips. Long live Christ the King.